Hi again, everyone. I'm Nick Caniglio.
And I'm Marnie Stockman, and this is the Lead It Like Lasso podcast, a Ted Lasso rewatch podcast. We are the authors of Lead It Like Lasso, a leadership book for life, your life.
Yeah, and we have never believed that Ted Lasso was really about soccer. It's truly a show about leadership, coaching, and culture. And we'll dive into each episode and tell you what we found. And for today's episode, we're diving into Season 4, Episode 2, Curiouser and Curiouser.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we are. So I don't know if the writers know, but words are very hard for me. And Curiouser is a tough one to say. And then they throw in feminism, and that gets me a little bit as well. But before we get into the show summary, I'm curious, Marnie, did episode 2, did it make you feel better, worse, or kind of the same in terms of where season 4 was going?
Oh, better. Let's go. Like, I'm ready. Last week predicted that the hazy filming of Kansas City was because Ted was a bit in a haze. And this is back to the crisp locker rooms. Thank goodness. Locker rooms now of AFC Richmond. Roy's back. Everybody's where they need to be. Ted's living above the pub. Are you kidding me? Yeah, let's go. How about you?
Yeah, I think the same. I think definitely last week was a setup, and I think I said it last week. It had the potential, right? And it's different, but it's the same, right? Same but different.
That was my first note. It's the whole thing, but different.
Yeah. So we'll dig into it. Pardon the 15-second interruption. We'd like to again thank the sponsor of today's episode.
We're still looking for Apple to sponsor us, but until then, it's us. Every week we talk about becoming a better leader, teammate, parent, coach, or human being.
And that's exactly what we're going to spend the rest of our week building.
Through our book, The Business of You, and through Blue, our AI coach that helps students and young professionals discover who they are before deciding what they do.
So if you'd like to learn more, there are links in the show notes.
Thanks for supporting what we do. Now let's talk Ted.
Let's start with the show summary. So the show opens up. Ted's back in Richmond and is officially beginning coaching the women's team, only to discover that Coach Chilton, the person who built much of the team, is resigning after being passed over for the head coaching job. And as Ted gets to know the players, he also starts to get to know Alice and really discovers that there's far more to her story than her reputation suggests. I think we'll be talking about that. Meanwhile, Higgins completes a report showing that Richmond's women's team has, a pretty bleak financial future and can negatively impact the men. And Rebecca wrestles with whether she's really supporting women. Keeley's trying to improve the team's, second-class facilities. Roy's dealing with a jealous Beard, and by the end, Ted realizes he's already found his assistant coach. Spoiler alert, Alice stays, Beard comes back, and Higgins drops sort of the bomb that the women's team, as I mentioned earlier, could threaten the financial future of the entire club. Did I get everything about right? I know we've got plenty of stuff to talk about. And
so much stuff to talk about, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think? I have my thoughts. You tell me if you want me to go or if you want to go. What do you think about Alice Chilton?
Oh, well, I mean, how is she not Roy's sister, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think of Alice Chilton. And one thing that actually, when you were talking about the summary, it made me think she's assistant manager and wants to be head coach and has said that, unlike Nate, so a little callback to Nate, who in a temper tantrum said that was what he was aiming for. So I hadn't even thought about that the first 2 times I watched it before 8 a.m. this morning. But that was my first reaction. How about you?
Yeah, I very much enjoyed the character to this point. I think she's a bit fascinating. A lot like Roy, just like you said, right? The first impression was that she's rude, she's difficult, she's abrasive, they use other words to describe her, sometimes no words at all. But this is where I start to get the feels again, right? Ted starts doing what he does, right? He gets curious, and of all people, Roy gives us the first clue, right? Most people think that she's rude. I think she's hilarious, but she's good, and I think how ironic is that? Let's ask Nate if I'm using ironic in the or beard.
Beard,
Yeah.
that's the right way. Yeah.
Also,
she's literal, so she's like, I don't get a little riddle, and then Ted's like, it's not a, and he's gonna say it's not a riddle. It's a nope. This isn't gonna play with her.
Yeah. But then we see when their striker Josie gets hurt, right? She immediately becomes nurturing, which is a little bit different, right? She's saying, I've got you, right? You're going to be all right. We're in this together. We come later to find out that, she's been through that. But suddenly, I think our perception starts to change a little bit, right? And that's kind of classic Ted Lasso storytelling.
Yeah. Now, my favorite bit is at the end when he goes and puts himself in the corner. There are so many petulant child, I said that last week, moments with like a Beard throwing temper tantrum, and Ted. That's very interesting. But when he turns to the corner and she cracks a little bit of smile, but she closes it back up. She's not going to let him see that side of her yet.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll talk about that, just the whole interaction more when we start talking about the leadership elements of the show. But they also, probably not surprising, I was surprised they kind of did it the way they did it, but Rebecca in this episode starts going through a feminism crisis, and I think it all initiates with, again, Alice, when she asked, did you really consider any woman for the job? Right. And Rebecca's response was quick, right? It was no. And she doesn't get curious. She gets defensive. Right. And I think she says, right. She's talking to Higgins, and I think Keeley walks in the room later where she thinks I'm a woman hating monster.
Yeah.
And Higgins is like, she didn't say any of that. Which is kind of a little micro leadership moment, right? Rebecca isn't responding to what Alice said. She's responding to what she actually heard. But Keeley grounds us and says, right, implications everything. And I think that's kind of funny.
Yeah. Once again, Keeley bringing some, because Keeley is, in our previous seasons, such the leader. And in this one, Rebecca's kind of protecting her a bit. We can chat about that too. But it was good to see Keeley had that. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. What else did you see?
Can we talk about brisket with the boss? Come on. Yes. So between Ted dropping brisket with the boss and Roy bringing a brown paper bag rolled up, and Rebecca's like, you really don't have to do this.
But again, it's funny. Last week we talked about the fact that Rebecca was becoming Ted. This week it was almost Roy was becoming Ted, and not only with the biscuits, although a little different, with some beef tallow, I believe, sugar-free and high protein, but just in other areas of the show as well. And I would be remiss. I mean, did Roy look a little jacked in this show? He looks like he's been working out.
Brett Goldstein, what have you been doing there? So I agreed, and because you had warned me last week, I mentioned that Rebecca was turning into Ted. So I just am putting pieces of it together. But Roy goes in and fixes the locker room for Keeley. Yeah. And remember, Ted fixed the locker room for Keeley by covering up her parts last season. And Roy is now doing the same by adjusting the locker room. And I thought, oh, sneaky.
Yeah, that's I didn't think about that. They lost me a second when he just pushed over that whole center unit, just by leaning on it. I was like, whoa. So what else? So I thought this, there was one scene in particular where I was like, oh my gosh, this is season one all over again, when Ted's on the sideline with with Alice, right? And they're just watching the players, right? And Alice is describing each of the players, and I swear I saw Nate and Beard standing next to him, and when they were talking about whether it was Jamie Tart or or Colin or whoever, it was a callback to that first season, first or second episode. I think it was the second episode, maybe it was the first. But I think we're essentially watching, right, that he's back in Richmond again, but he isn't the same person. And I'm really interested to see how that plays out again.
So in the callbacks, he's talking to Chilton, and she says, enough, which is what Roy, I've had enough of your mind games and gifts. What even is A Wrinkle in Time? So she's already easy there, grasshopper. So he's going to have to figure out how to unlock Chilton.
Yeah, she definitely... that enough is just, when I first heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, that is Roy Kent. He has said that exact line. And of course, she's got a whole bunch of oys too. Oi, 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 right? Do you have a recent callback, right? Notice that Rebecca's wearing green. She had the bright green pants on walking down the stairs, and that's the new color.
New color,
there are a couple of things. I don't know if they're Easter eggs or not. There are a couple things I wasn't sure about, but I did find it ironic when Ted was doing the press conference, the presser, as they say, and Beard, of course, is being conspicuous, acting like he doesn't care, and he's watching the press conference.
In his book.
In the book, which is The Time Traveler's Wife. So you've got this man whose kind of old relationship has returned from the past, and he's hiding inside a book about a relationship that's disrupted by time. I just thought, oh my, crazy. So this week I actually caught the big book title, where last week, the Johnny Tremaine, I missed it. So I was pretty proud of myself for that one.
Yeah. Yeah. I searched that one too, and creating a deep bond that tests their strengths through constant goodbyes. Yes, you knew. They're going to be together.
Any idea? They dropped May called Beard Mr. Gladstone.
Yes. Yep. I looked up.
And I know he was a British PM on a Google search. Any idea what that meant at all?
So he withdrew in the face of setback was one of the things that I heard about him. And think about how Beard withdrew, right? He was hiding. He was in disguise. He went to another office to get away from Roy. He was hiding behind the book, watching the phone. So I think that is what that was in reference to.
Oh, you got all the answers. Do you have an answer about Poppy Thompson either?
No, didn't look that one up. What is Poppy Thompson? I remember the name.
No, I mean, Lasso sleuths help us out, right? Who is Poppy Thompson? I did look it up, and I didn't find much on it.
Didn't find anything.
I'm sure
okay.
Our audience will
let us
do better
know.
sleuthing than I did, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, we would.
Just please drop us something. How could they get best place? Leave it like Lasso on every social you can find.
Yeah, the YouTube comments pop up, so that's a good place. Or if they're listening on Spotify, find us on social.
Yeah. All right, not to offend the people that are listening on Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, or their Echo. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. And we would love a review, just as a random aside.
Yeah,
in
we would.
Anybody's interested in that. Any other callbacks, Easter eggs, pop culture references? There were plenty others. Oh, I got one. I'm sorry. I answered my own question.
Okay.
And it's nothing more than when Ted and Beard were at the bar and they were discussing their relationship, and the Chicago song, right? You're the inspiration.
Yes,
pops up in the background.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect.
Yeah. And I'm not the best at recognizing music when it's in the background because I'm so focused on what the characters are saying, but that one was so clearly their song that I couldn't miss it. How about their showers, right? Ted fixed the showers for Roy, and callback for he fixed the showers. Oh, also, Ted gave Chilton a going away gift. Keeley gave Barbara a going away gift. And then Barbara had to pay Keeley back because she wasn't going away. Or no, she had to buy it herself. And then she wasn't going away. So then she had to pay her back, right? That whole shenanigans. And Ted asked for a gift back from Alice Chilton. She really didn't even debate that. Just like, yeah, you want it back? Okay. So,
do you have any thoughts on what that gift was? Of course, we never found out.
I don't even know if there was a gift in there, to be quite honest. I wonder if we're gonna. That's
coming back. I don't know how or why, but that is coming back somehow.
And so what I was surprised, frankly, as he was pulling something out, that it wasn't a biscuits with the boss box. And so it made me think with the polka dots, keep an eye out for that, because that the polka dot, that'll be back for sure.
Perfect.
I think those were most of the callbacks I have. Everything else is around a couple of the leadership themes that I thought were pretty strong.
We'll start there. Where do you want to go first?
Well, you know me. I'm like The Sound of Music. I like to start at the very beginning because it's a very good place to start. So let me start there. So Higgins spent the night memorizing the acronym of that big binder. Right now, we do leadership trainings all of the time, and one of the things we have talked about is the Eisenhower matrix of people doing what is important versus urgent. And sometimes you start doing things that waste your time, that help you procrastinate instead of doing the urgent or important stuff. And so that is exactly what Higgins doesn't really want to see what's in that report. So he spends a whole night memorizing the acronym of it. And that is a little self-sabotage that a lot of folks in business do.
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't even know what to add to that, but I think you're spot on. I'm honestly a little disappointed because for those that don't know, Marty and I go out, we do speaking presentations, workshops, and keynotes. And one of the things that we typically almost always talk about is the fact that stats tell you what, right? But stories tell you why. And I can't believe you didn't start there, because I thought that was such a big theme of the show. And I know it was sequential, but come on.
Well, that is the one thing that I think we need to talk about for a long period of time. And it went on throughout the show, which is why I didn't bring it up first, because I think this is going to be the meat of what we talk about. I think that is the most critical piece of this entire thing. The fact that we state all the time is that storytelling is 22 times more memorable than facts. So that is something, because we are talking a lot to high school students, folks that are interviewing, and how to interview properly, right? Like that's the angle, how to write a college essay. And what we know is that if somebody says, tell me about yourself, and you start listing your facts, I went to this school, I was in this club, I did this thing, I did that thing, irrelevant. That doesn't make you stand out at all. What makes you stand out? Your story is what makes you uniquely you. So yeah, what did you want to say about it? Because we could go on for days on this one.
Yeah, I thought we were going to punt it, but you came back to me. Since you started it, I'll continue. And we often talk a lot to young adults, whether they're in high school trying to get in college, or they're in college trying to get their first job, right? So kind of along those same lines, right? I thought this entire episode was really about seeing the person behind the resume. Right? Boots, we met Boots. We have to talk about Boots and the rest of the team, right, that we met. But she wasn't a goalkeeper who refused to wear gloves, right? There was a story there, and Ted tried to pull that out, right? Alice isn't a difficult employee. Another story there, right? She had torn ACL multiple times. Yep. She had a lot of promise, right? I mean, we can say the same thing. Ted isn't an American coach returned to Richmond. There's a story we're about to figure out with that. And I think the interesting thing, I thought this was really interesting, right, is that you mentioned Higgins, the Higgins Report, right, whatever acronym that was, right? That was an analytical report really telling Rebecca that the women's team won't work out financially, right? Yeah. Yep. So you've got Ted spending the entire episode saying the numbers aren't the whole story, right? And the data says that Richmond's women's team really shouldn't exist. And then it feels like Ted saying, let's see what this story becomes. And I thought that was kind of the theme of every interaction within the show.
I think it's not just going to be the show. I think it's going to be the season. Like that is the story that they're going to tell.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll get back to that, I'm sure, because there are a bunch of different scenes with that, but I do want to get your opinion. We've met, kind of like the first season when we met, Isaac and Colin and Jamie for the first time, right? We were finally introduced, in addition to Alice, right? We were introduced to some of the players. And they spent a decent amount of time on the twins, a little bit on the striker, Josie. I would try to say the twins' name, but I don't think I got it right. They spent some time talking about Boots, and I feel like Boots is going to be
fun.
Very fun, right? Any initial takes from the initial introduction of the team?
Okay, so I think it's not a surprise that Beard is weird, right? Yeah. And I think Boots is going. I have no reason to believe this, but I feel like Beard and Boots are going to get along because Boots has got like this story of like the man's not going to tell me what to do to put on these gloves, and that feels very Beard to me. I don't. Am I off base? What do you think?
No, I agree, and I think she might even be a little deeper than Beard, right? She right out of the gate, I think she gave us something that we can view kind of through a leadership lens when she talked about the sting being everything, why she doesn't wear gloves, right? And she boils it down to what's the point in life if you're really not feeling anything at all. She's literally choosing pain because pain makes the experience real, right? And, she goes on to say, I get it, right? There's an issue with that. But it does bring up, I think, a larger leadership idea, which is, are we so busy insulating ourselves from discomfort that we're also insulating ourselves from growth? And I just think you and I are kind of living that on the day to day. We're talking about, okay, how do we leverage technology to better do the job that we're trying to do? But we both didn't want to deal with the discomfort of having to learn everything, and we're kind of going through that process of learning it, and it stings because it's pulling us away from some of the things that we know we want to work on. But it is also, we can tell as we talk through it, right? It's driving growth in ourselves. I thought that was a pretty good reminder.
So interesting. In the leadership workshop that we do for the local community electric cooperative, I had them do activities around Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead. Mm-hmm. And everybody got to pick. You could do a presentation. You could do whatever you wanted. And one of the presenters he brought in, or one of the participants brought in 4 sets of gloves. One was no glove. One was like gardening glove, like a thin glove. One was a heavier glove, and one was oven mitts. And they had to unwrap a gift that was saran wrap. And it was interesting because when you were over insulated, as you said, the oven mitt, like she got through nowhere untangling the thing. But the guy with the grippy gloves, they were actually mechanics gloves, now that I think of it, not gardening gloves. He was actually faster than the guy just with bare hands. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting leadership lesson, right? The authentic version of yourself are slightly insulated, slightly protected. And I thought, so when you just said without the gloves on, I thought of that lesson because that was a good way to demonstrate it.
Yeah. Wear sticky gloves, I guess.
Well, so is this, I mean, clearly they don't bring it up for no reason. So do they end up winning something because she tries the gloves? Or does she create some new glove technology? Like, where do these gloves go? That was not a throwaway conversation. We've seen this. These writers are good. This will be back.
No doubt. Now, since I kind of went from boots and the team to kind of the lesson of the stinging lesson there, I didn't bring up the one note I had, which I have written down right here, which I thought it was interesting that the one player we didn't see, which we were all expecting to see, which is Shannon. So are we thinking that with the striker Josie going down, that's going to be an opportunity for Shannon to come back into play?
I hope so.
Or do we just think she's not in this series at all?
I feel like Shannon's coming back. I had forgotten about that. I love that you said that. Yeah, this is Shannon's opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was shocked. Because I was looking for her. I don't think I missed her, but you think they would have profiled her if she was part of the team for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And Ted would have said something to her.
Yeah.
No question. I'm glad you brought that up. Forgot about that. Yeah.
What else you got?
How the twins are going to play out, but there will be some interesting twin lessons learned along the way. Absolutely. Yeah, that'll be curious. I don't know what studies we're going to hear about or what lore fiction modern myth Ted is going to debunk along twins, but by golly, something's going to be there.
Yeah, and I think the way the twins played out when Ted asked Coach Chilton, I forget the exact word, but which twin was born first, right? And she said something to the effect of, "Who cares?" Yeah. And Ted's like, "The twins do," right? So I think episode 2, they reinforced the most famous kind of theme of the entire first series, which was curiosity really defeats judgment every time. We saw it. We saw it with the twins. We saw it when he wanted to learn about boots, right? When he was trying to figure out, what Alice was all about, right? Yep. Alice, and she plays Roy's part, right? Story's irrelevant. And he comes back and says, right, I just like figuring out what makes folks tick. And it reinforces the whole be curious, not judgmental.
For sure.
Which is perfect.
I have something that I'm curious about. Mm-hmm. The sign in the press room that sits behind Ted, banter is on that sign, which surprised me.
Yeah.
Along with Pinter and Sons, Nando's, and Nike. Yeah.
I looked up Pinter and Sons, and it was some business in Ohio, which I said that can't be right. But
I watch enough British comedy game shows to know that Nando's is a British thing. But okay. So you looked at that too.
Yeah, I don't know.
I want to go back to you saying Roy was becoming Ted. So he was being strategic about all of these shenanigans in the locker room, right? And no one gets to know his secrets, but Keeley does get to know his secrets and come on with the conversation of, I think I'm losing someone and it would be a shame for two people who should be together, not just for them, but for everybody else. They are talking about the fact that we all want those two to get back together for sure. But even in regular press outside the show, you'll hear Brett Goldstein and Keeley say I think they should get back together.
Yeah.
And is this, all I can say is, people, go get your friends to watch Ted Lasso because we need Apple TV to pick up season 5 and 6 because it might take that long for Roy and Keeley to get back together. So come on, folks.
Yeah, I guess I'm hoping for it. I mean, Roy's certainly hoping for it because he was talking about those two, and Keeley gave him the quick out and said, "Beard, oh yeah, yeah." So yeah, I that's definitely something that is on the prediction list for sure. But they spent little time getting that tension, back into play
Yeah.
really quick. They
Yeah.
know a winner when they see it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You have our attention.
Yeah.
Did you catch Alice's? So I always find the post-it notes, right? Ted would hang believe signs, and Alice has got some very neatly organized post-it notes of her own. I caught a few of them. Pressure is privilege. It's not the opponent you feel. It's the fear. It's the failure itself. Talking isn't doing. I feel like that one right there is going to be Alice's, like, talking isn't doing, Ted. And she's going to find out that sometimes the talking is the doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I caught the post-it notes. I didn't do the deep dive into it as you did. I put a mental note. She's a very organized and post-it note kind of gal.
Yes.
Which is different than Roy. So it's, same, but different, right? In terms of she comes at it from a very different approach. It's the same output or similar output. But I was a little surprised, they talked a lot about, and it was part of the show, obviously, the dossier that she put together for Ted. But it was very unlike Ted to do all the research, right? That was and kind of gather, and what a touching way to kind of come back to it at the end when he asked her to take the position, or said I found my new coach, and where he was the one who actually did the research on Alice, and that's where we found out that she was indeed a rising star, that she had injury after injury after injury. That kind of pushed her over the edge, and again, it reinforces the know the story, not just the facts that you hear about.
Yeah, I think Ted's growing up, right? I mean, we all know everybody had an arc, right?
Yeah.
And Ted had lots of learning to do, and he has learned some of those lessons already. Not that there aren't more to go, but he is becoming a little bit more, he's got a little bit more of the tactic piece that he didn't have the first season, because now he knows some things.
Yeah. But what he always knew, and I thought this was another, it's an adjacent lesson to all the things that we have already talked about, right? But the whole notion of not confusing reputation with identity. And again, we said it, right? Alice's reputation was she's difficult, she's rude, she's a bitch, right? Ted doesn't ignore those things. He just doesn't assume it's the entire story. And he never has. Right. And
Correct.
Probably because, that mistake has happened to him so much, where people actually have assumed, right, that who he was and what he did and his reputation was who he was as a person. And they couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, that is interesting, because reputation, identity, and story are typically really closely linked. But when you hear someone's reputation, you should do the work to get the story. Because in a shocking turn of events, everything you find on social media is not true. I know, like, stand back for that news flash, but very much. This is just as an aside, and I kind of love it because it's always made me laugh that it's true. Roy, a budget isn't a real thing. Because, like, it really much is. He's like, it's made up of numbers that someone made up. What did you think of that?
It's funny. I think he convinced me. I mean, as somebody who's been tied to budgets before, I was originally on Rebecca's side, but I was like, yeah, it is all kind of made up. So I like it that way. I'm a fan.
Yeah, so. that made me laugh. I was like, yeah, more of that, Roy. Let's see, where are you going with your strategy? Because that's all tied to, is Rebecca going to fund what this is going to take, right? Who's in? Is she really all the way in? And again, we've talked about when your behaviors, your core values are under stress, you revert to your shadow behaviors or primal instincts. And for Rebecca, high achievers often revert to self-protection, and so you become a control freak. What is interesting is she is protecting Keeley. And so don't give Keeley the book, let's read it for, we don't want to bog her down. And she's controlling about that, which is super interesting because Keeley is such a part of her, is such a best friend that her primal instinct of protection doesn't just protect herself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what do you think about Rebecca's reaction just in this entire episode? It was, she had come so far in terms of, her arc, right? That it seemed like this was a massive regression, in the whole feminist thing, and in that she just absolutely kind of flipped out and got really defensive. Thoughts on that?
On the finance piece or the
no, just on the general reaction, just like over. I'll tell you where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
I thought the general reaction was, well, number one, it was funny that she's a little bit intimidated by Alice, right? And it was hilarious when she stood in the corner and Higgins called her out on that right after the Eleanor Roosevelt quote.
They're even like children, but yeah.
Yeah. But eventually Rebecca realizes that Alice did her a favor, right? She forced her to kind of examine a blind spot that she had.
Yeah.
And then she says something that I think is important for all of us, right? She talks about feedback and it requires empathy. I'm going to read it because I wrote it down. Next time you have something helpful to say, perhaps show a little more empathy and a little less judgment. And I think an important point to remember that feedback can be correct and still be delivered poorly.
Correctly. Okay, so I literally just did role playing with the group on that today.
Yeah. And Roy learned that lesson over and over again. And it's just another reminder that, that can happen. And you just need to, no matter how right you are, right, you need to learn how to deliver it so it gets received the way it should.
Because she said the quote, no one can, it was Eleanor Roosevelt, right? No one can make you feel inferior without your consent.
Yep.
The other thing is, I think this is becoming very real for Rebecca. It was one thing when it was, imaginary piece of paper that this women's sports league is happening. But it could crush the men's team. And that is some next level accountability to herself, to her livelihood, to the community in a huge way. And, a lot of times when people talk about equality, they will say things like, it's not pie. Enough for everyone, right? But the reality of it is this one could take out the other. So it feels more like pie, the way it's being presented to her. So that's a little scary for her because how do people, the biggest stressor for people, for companies, is when something threatens the core of your business, right? Or for a human, when I don't think I'm going to get fed, have a house, eat, etc. And that is what she's seeing is I really want this best version, but I'm a little scared. I know this is the right thing to do, but this is a personal risk to me, not just an idea that might flop. So it's not just the failure. It is the personal risk to her that makes it a lot more real, I think.
Yeah. And I think that will be one of the lead protagonists as we kind of go through this entire season would be my guess.
Throw out protagonists. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been watching too many podcasts. Listening. Anything else before we kind of roll into predictions?
The quotes around with Boots, stats are great, but what's her story, right, was the quote that you started with, and the fact that Ted won over Chilton by knowing her story, I think is just so powerful. The other interesting, here's one little snippet, is that the fable, the boy who cried wolf, right? He's always coming out saying there's a wolf, and everybody gears up and runs away, and goes and checks, and then they don't believe when there's actually a wolf. The whole time, Chilton, that Rebecca is lecturing Chilton, and Chilton's trying to interrupt and say that, like, she's not quitting. She took the job back. That Rebecca had dealt with enough of her being rude and interrupting that Rebecca finally decided she was over it, and she wasn't going to let her interrupt. And this time it was actually important and relevant to the situation, but Rebecca was already done with it. And so that is also a leadership, like a lesson to learn about yourself in terms of how you present. If like you're constantly doing a thing without the backing of it, when you finally have a back to it, it might no longer be there to present itself because nobody's listening.
I completely agree.
Sorry, that was my last. I think that was the last. I mean, I've only watched it twice so far today.
Yeah. Any predictions for what's to come?
Well, I feel 100% in this one. Beard's going to get a shaven haircut.
I think you're right. Anything else?
Well, I like your prediction that Shannon's coming. I did not even think about that. I apologize to Shannon that I hadn't thought of her. I think that's a good one. Interesting that Rebecca's mom's back. I don't know that I have a prediction on that. But what else?
Yeah, I think I was looking at what I wrote down. I inadvertently covered most of them, right? I think Boots is definitely she matters, right? And interested to see where that character development goes, as well as the other characters. Obviously Keeley and Roy absolutely back in play. It'll be interesting to see. I'm curious how the Ted, the Roy, and the Beard triangle kind of plays out.
Do the Diamond Dogs play, or does Alice become a Diamond Dog? Does that not come into? Yeah. Oh, and Roy and Beard have had 3 years together.
Yeah. So I'm curious about that, but yeah, we'll see where it goes. And then the other thing that I wrote down is what we talked about, right? Alice is Ted's new Roy, right? She's going to challenge him. She's going to ground him in soccer, football, reality. And really, just as you were saying, I think she's going to become one of his closest allies for sure.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, as we like to say, that's our whistle. Game's over, but the leadership lessons keep on playing.
So I don't know that we ever say this. We have a weekly newsletter where we deliver Ted Lasso leadership lessons all year round, even when episodes don't show up. So if you are interested in more Ted Lasso leadership lessons, be sure to subscribe at leaditlikelasso.com. Follow us here. Follow us everywhere at Lead It Like Lasso.
Yeah, for those that missed out, last week I think we talked about the whole notion of
the recombobulation area, yes.
Recombobulating, yeah. But until next time, stay curious, stay kind, keep leading it like Lasso. And if you were so inclined, whatever podcast platform that you listen to, we would love a review. Thanks so much, everybody.